Stark. You may survive us yet.
The sun peeked through the open windows in the chambers of the Hand of the King. Tyrion was preparing for another small council meeting, as his niece's gentle cries were heard at a distance. Tyrion reached into the cradle and gathered the young Joanna Lannister and began soothing her. Just then Sansa Lannister entered their chambers as the city bells began to ring. The bells startled the young Joanna as she began to fuss. Tyrion did his best, trying to impress his wife.
Fatherhood becomes you,
claimed Sansa. Tyrion grinned as he addressed her. I assume you bring news. Why else would the bells ring? Asked Tyrion.
There was a royal announcement,
Admitted Sansa. Without the hand present? Asked a shocked Tyrion.
Not by the king.
Reassured Sansa. The queen, then? Asked Tyrion.
You know Arya has refused the title, since they were never married.
Admitted Sansa. Yes, of course. Old habits, I guess, answered Tyrion. But that doesn't explain the bells, asked Tyrion, as his wife leaned in for a brief kiss.
The king is going to be a father, and Arya has set sail for Volantis,
informed Sansa. So the would-be prince or princess has left the capital, technically, admitted Tyrion.
Now the bells ring,
exclaimed Sansa. And now the bells ring, repeated Tyrion.
Would you?
Offered Tyrion to Sansa. She collected young Joanna as Tyrion responded to her information. It appears I owe the king a congratulations, Tyrion admitted. Tyrion returned a short kiss to his loving wife, checked his appearance in the mirror, and promptly left their chambers. Tyrion thought it better to attend his sister's wake alone. No Septons would offer their prayers, due to the belief of her guilt in regards to the Sept of Baelor tragedy. Tyrion refused to address it during her trial, knowing it was the exact reason why the faith would refuse her rights. He opened the doors to the throne room, and just as he anticipated, it was empty, except for Cersei. She was well attended to. No doubt it had something to do with large amounts of Lannister gold invested in her funeral. No bells rung, and nobody planned to attend the evening, even Tyrion. He approached her body, and noticed her head was covered by a thick veil. Her death might have been quick, but it wasn't clean. Tyrion stood in silence for as long as he could remember before he spoke. Joanna is beautiful. Luckily she got your cheekbones, Tyrion laughed. She will be made aware someday of the events surrounding her birth, Tyrion promised. He sighed heavily and tried to continue. If there was ever any action of mine that justified your actions in your own mind, I would like to apologize for my behavior. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you by raising your daughter as my own, Tyrion cried. It's ironic. You seem so certain of my intentions to destroy our family, but as it turns out, my actions will be the only reason our family survives, and I'll have to continue to prove that to you. Tyrion paused. You'll be unhappy to know that I've given your last words to me very little thought. If your last statement to me was a lie, I'm happy to return the favor, cried Tyrion. Qyburn survived. He likely will be sent to the wall. A small mercy for what he offered me, Tyrion choked. He fumbled with a dirty cloth as he unraveled them in an attempt to offer Cersei something. After a few moments, Tyrion firmly grasped Cersei's stiff right hand. He extended her fingers and wrapped her cold hand in the skeletal remains of another hand. Qyburn kept Jaime's severed hand. Curious fellow, Tyrion choked. He steadied himself and retrieved a torch from the throne room pillar. He gently placed it under his sister's pyre as smoke began to billow. The flames eventually engulfed her clothing as he watched his sister and brother hold hands one last time. Tyrion's eyes welled as he softly said, "I forgive you," and promptly exited the throne room. Tyrion approached the entryway of the small council chamber, and a familiar noise made him halt his approach. He listened intently as the noise grew louder and more distinct. After a minute or so, Tyrion could not deny the distaste growing inside him as he burst through the double doors. As he expected, a young man and woman were atop his council table, and the young woman screamed in an attempt to cover herself.
You said we'd be alone,
cried the young woman. Apologies, my dear, said the young man. The sound of the man's voice almost knocked the wind from Tyrion's chest. The woman streaked from the room as Tyrion turned his attention to that same young man. He was fairly built, with olive skin and bushy black hair. Tyrion now noticed a red ruby pendant hanging from his neck. "So good to see you again, my old friend," said the young man. In all his nakedness, he strolled around the table and approached Tyrion. His cockman slapped against his thigh as he walked. Tyrion's mouth was agape as he was starting to put the story together. The young man walked right past him and collected his robes from behind Tyrion. As he secured it by tying the waist straps, Tyrion mouthed, "Varys?" "The very same," said a young Lord Varys. "You know your reputation as a ladies' man may be greatly wounded if you greet every cock you see with an open mouth," chuckled Varys. Tyrion realized his mouth was still open and quickly tightened his lips together. "And you thought you'd have your way in my small council?" asked Tyrion. "Since the king's pardon for my alleged betrayal of our former queen, he has granted me my old post as Master of Whispers." Varys paused. "I believe the three-eyed raven had something to do with your acquittal," Tyrion retorted. "As I thought, we could all now subside with all the cock jokes," smiled Varys. "I must say I respect the audacity. Even admire it," admitted Tyrion. "I thought you might," admitted Varys while taking his seat. "It's good to see you in good health," admitted Tyrion to a nodding Varys. Now the other masters had joined the council. Sir Davos, Yara Greyjoy, Sansa, Missandei, and Qyburn took their seats amidst conversation.
The rebels are in the black cells,
Informed Yara to Tyrion. "Very good. Casualties?" asked Tyrion.
You could count them on one hand.
Answered Yara. "The king will be pleased," said Tyrion, as King Gendry finally entered the room. The noise of sliding chairs echoed through the room as Gendry entered. "Please be seated," ordered a slightly embarrassed Gendry. "Lord Varys, you're looking strong," said King Gendry. "Like an oxen, who's shed his yoke," said a grinning Varys while eyeing Tyrion. Tyrion blushed and quickly changed the subject. "Your Grace, the rebel Ironborn were captured and are waiting your judgment." Tyrion paused and gestured towards Yara.
They were taken with minimal resistance, less than a dozen in total, on a single ship. For some, the old ways die a slow death.
Admitted Yara. "We appreciate your speedy sailing and quick capture of the raiders," gestured the king. "Any updates from up north?" asked Gendry. "The Warden of the North sends his regards," answered Varys. "Winterfell has been returned to a livable state, and construction at East Watch has commenced." Varys paused, as Gendry looked pleased. "And the Watch?" asked Gendry. "Over 10,000 strong have enlisted, and growing," answered Tyrion. "And are well financed," admitted Sir Davos. "The Iron Bank will receive their final payment within the fortnight," Davis continued. "Lord Commander Arya will be anchoring in Braavos on her way to Volantis," Davos finished. "Her escort?" asked Gendry. "The remaining Dothraki who fell ill over the weather have decided to return to Essos. The few that have decided to remain have joined House Giantsbane, and will be assisting them in farming as the winter months close." Tyrion paused. "The Citadel has also informed us the days are growing longer, and expect the official return of spring in the coming months." Qyburn paused. "Which would make this the shortest winter in living memory," Qyburn finished. "Perhaps the Dragon Queen had something to do with that," admitted Tyrion. "Speaking of Lady Arya, may I offer my congratulations, Your Grace?" finished Tyrion as applause filled the room. Gendry nodded in appreciation. "Have you thought of names for the realm's newest prince or princess?" asked Varys. "Lady Arya has asked for the name to be Sandor, if it's a boy," being Gendry. "And what of a girl?" asked Lady Yara. Gendry simply stated, "Brianna." "If there is nothing further," stated the king as he stood and excused himself. After a long silence, Varys then turned to Tyrion. "It feels good to know the realm is finally in good hands," he said. Tyrion gently ran his finger across the table, agreeing with Varys. Tyrion now realizing just how far they had come.